The story continues, and each moment becomes more intense. What's about to happen could change everything. Are you ready to move forward? Usagi talks to her mother, who gets angry upon seeing that her grades are not good. She then informs her that she will advance the rejections of her marriage. However, Usagi asks her to wait until her graduation, but her mother doesn't listen. On the other hand, a student gathers the whole academy and informs them that the witch hunting festival is approaching. He also shows them that, unlike other years, this time they will earn coins, which they can exchange for points and money. Therefore, the protagonist gathers his team and tells them that they need to train to win. After this, Ikaruga explains to the girls that he has a huge debt and a sister to take care of, so he feels a great love for money. Just then, Usagi enters the classroom while remembering that it will be her last month at the academy because of her mother. Then, the captain of platoon number 23, named Ishida, approaches them and says that he wants to compete with them in the festival. Later, Usagi meets the president of the committee, named Raima, who tells her that soon she won't have to be at the academy anymore. After this, Usagi starts trembling, until the protagonist sees her and approaches to help her. On the other hand, Uka meets a girl named Sendo, who informs her that the president of the council wants to talk to her. Therefore, Uka decides to go see her. Once there, the president tells her that a witch named Memphis killed all the members of the committee except for Sendo. Meanwhile, the protagonist takes Usagi to the infirmary and stays with her while the girls go to class. When Usagi wakes up, she thanks him and feels embarrassed for being alone with him. Meanwhile, the president tells Uka that a month ago, Raima arrived at the academy and immediately became the president of the committee, which she finds very suspicious, especially since that's when she lost her teammates. On the other hand, the protagonist decides to accompany Usagi to her house, when suddenly she tells him that Raima is her fiancé and that her time at the academy is about to end. With this, the protagonist invites her to spend the night at his apartment. Once there, Usagi takes a bath while thinking that this will be her first time with a boy. She even imagines a future with the protagonist until she exits the shower. When the protagonist sees her, he asks her to put on some clothes, but she slips, and he catches her, creating a very awkward moment. Then, Usagi tries to kiss him, but the girls ruin the moment and beat up the protagonist. Later, he confesses to Usagi that the girls are there to help, as none of them want her to stop studying at the academy. So they come up with a plan to improve her grades. Additionally, the protagonist reminds her that they need her, as they owe their lives to her. Later, Ikaruga shows Platoon 23 their plan for the festival, which is to cosplay. She introduces the girls, causing Ishida and his teammates to go crazy. Finally, she shows the protagonist, who decides to take a picture. The next day, Usagi sees a picture of her grandfather and remembers that she is no longer alone thanks to the protagonist. Meanwhile, Uka continues thinking about Raima, until a student tells her that she is painting the academy for the festival by his orders. On the other hand, the protagonist meets Raima, who tells him that Usagi is hated by her family for having killed her own brother. With this, the protagonist gets angry, asserting that this cannot be true. However, Raima responds that it is. Later, Uka asks her provisional relic eater to let her see the academy from the sky. After this, she sees that the students have painted a huge spell, which could end the lives of many. Meanwhile, Usagi encounters Raima, who approaches her and reminds her that she is a murderer. As a result, Usagi faints, and Raima kidnaps her. Meanwhile, the president discovers that Sendo is being possessed, so she tries to shoot her, but Sendo is faster. Then, Sendo accompanies Uka to stop Raima. However, Memphis takes over Sendo and stops Uka until Raima grabs her and puts her to sleep. In this, Mary senses that something is wrong. Then, the president calls the protagonist and informs him that she is alive thanks to her bulletproof vest. However, she explains that Uka is in danger and needs his help. Meanwhile, Memphis takes control of Uka's body and reminds Raima that he is in the academy because of her, as she has only used him to get there. On the other hand, the protagonist tells the president that he is only interested in rescuing Uka, so he asks Mary to stop Memphis's spell while he saves Usagi. Later, Usagi has a memory where she appears playing with her brother, who takes a shotgun to play until she tries to stop him. But unfortunately, the weapon activates and kills the child. A few days later, Usagi visits her brother's grave when Rima suddenly appears, slaps her, and tells her that one day she will be his. Then, Usagi wakes up and argues with Rima, who hits her and tries to do inappropriate things. However, Usagi remembers her friends and bites him to defend herself. After this, Rima gets angry and tries to kill her. But then, the protagonist appears and strikes him. He also asks Usagi to help Mary save the academy. Next, the protagonist decides to face Rima with the help of Lapis. Meanwhile, Mary uses her magic to destroy Memphis's magical artifact. Then, Memphis arrives and tries to shoot her, but Usagi stops her and jumps off the top floor with her. As they fall, Usagi tries to use her weapon, but Memphis casts a spell, causing all the boys to start chasing her. On the other hand, the protagonist defeats Rima but decides to leave him alive. Then, he returns to Mary and faces Memphis, who uses Uka's Reiciator. As a result, the protagonist loses his armor and realizes that Uka's weapon is very powerful. So, he tries to fight up close. Then, Memphis uses her magic to freeze him and make Usagi hesitate, who prepares to shoot until she sees Uka's soul trying to fight Memphis. Usagi then shoots Memphis, causing her spirit to leave. Finally, she takes a magical bullet and ends her. At the end, Mary destroys the artifact and everything ends. The next day, the director talks to Ikaruga and shows her a kind of diamond, called the Lost Matrix. He asks her if she knows about it, as it seems to be in her hometown. However, she answers that she knows nothing. Later, the protagonist and Usagi see their points as a platoon and realize that they are still losers. Then, they go to class, where Ikaruga tells them that she will stop attending classes for a while. However, she decides not to explain why. As a result, the protagonist remembers the day he met Ikaruga, when he was lying on the ground after fighting Uka. He then comments that it seems strange that she is acting like this. On the other hand, Haunted meets with a scientist named Isuki, who tells him that very soon he will be able to revive the elves with the help of the Lost Matrix. Then, she suffers a headache and says that her sister Ikaruga has leaked information about the Matrix. Meanwhile, the protagonist and the girls decide to follow Ikaruga, who enters the sewer and calls Isuki to deliver the Matrix. Then, Isuki warns her that she doesn't want any tricks because she doesn't trust her. Just then, two mercenaries stop Ikaruga. On the other hand, the protagonist and the girls flee from other armed men, while Lapis indicates the exact location of Ikaruga. Upon finding her, the protagonist strikes the mercenaries and takes Ikaruga to a safe place. However, some robots appear and start shooting at them. After this, the protagonist ends up injured, so Ikaruga takes him to a hideout and tells her sister that she won't get the Matrix if her friends end up dead. Meanwhile, the director realizes what's happening, so he gathers a team to go fight. While this is happening, Uka and the girls are locked in Isuki's laboratory, where she approaches them and introduces herself. She also tells them that her sister is only interested in science, just like her. On the other hand, Ikaruga tells the protagonist that when they were kids, she and Isuki were always in the laboratory creating inventions, until one day Isuki started reading a book about family and friends. After that, she raised an elf baby who became so attached that he began calling her mom. Seeing this, and realizing the danger ahead, Ikaruga decided to flee the laboratory and steal the Matrix. After finishing her story, the protagonist asks her why she returned to the laboratory to negotiate with the Matrix. She decides not to answer and instead climbs on top of him, stating that she wants to experiment with something else, as she has never experienced what love feels like. However, they are interrupted by Isuki, who approaches them to negotiate with Ikaruga. Therefore, Ikaruga gets dressed again and injects the protagonist so he can't move. She then reminds Isuki that she must keep her part of the deal if she doesn't want her life to become a nightmare. As a result, Isuki orders for the girls to be released far from the laboratory. However, Usagi decides to return, claiming that Ikaruga surely needs her help. So, Uka and Mary decide to go as well. Just then, they see a band of inquisitors and robots heading toward the laboratory. Then, the director stops in his limousine and informs them that they are going to fight. He also gives them some weapons and invites them to the war. On the other hand, the protagonist summons Lapis and takes her witch hunter form. After doing so, he heads to the laboratory where he faces the enemy robots. He then ascends to the top floor of the laboratory to find Ikaruga. Meanwhile, the director uses his weapon and destroys more robots. As a result, the protagonist meets Uka, who informs him that Ikaruga is in danger because if the director finds out that she has the Matrix, she will be arrested. On the other hand, Isuki tells Ikaruga that it was because of her that she failed as a scientist. She also explains that every time she tries to feel an emotion, she experiences a terrible headache due to an experiment. However, she claims that after reviving the elves, she will join Haunted. With this, Ikaruga explains that her purpose is to take her away from that laboratory. However, Isuki shoots her and demands that she hand over the Matrix. Then, Ikaruga shows her that she used the Matrix in her DNA to gain her power. After this, Ikaruga transforms and says that she will blow up the place to save her. Then, Haunted appears and kills Isuki. Seeing this, Ikaruga attacks him, causing a massive explosion. She then approaches Isuki and tries to help her, but realizes that her transformation is incomplete. However, she shoots Haunted, who summons a dragon and destroys the building. As a result, the protagonist saves Ikaruga, who tells him that the dragon is actually just a machine. After this, the protagonist distracts the dragon while Usagi prepares to shoot it. As a result, she manages to hit its core. However, the dragon strikes the protagonist, so Uka appears and tries to help him. However, the dragon throws her to the ground and attempts to attack her, but the protagonist impales it with his sword. Despite this, Lapis informs him that his power is at its limit. So, Mary gives him some of her magic, allowing the protagonist to defeat the giant dragon. For now, we've reached the end of this part, but this is far from over. What's coming next promises to be even more exciting, so don't miss it.